People are realizing that they have gotten the shaft. More and more white people are realizing that this notion that somehow it's virtuous to stand aside, to give this country that their ancestors built to newcomers from all over the world is a crazy thing. I think more whites are going to realize that. What form their realization will take, I do not know, whether it be the third party, whether it be white student unions. In any case, I think whites will gradually dawn on them that they have legitimate rights that only they will defend, because nobody else can care about the rights of whites. I think we have evidence of the way people have reacted in this room. None of the non-whites here seem to think, except with a few brave exceptions, none of the non-whites here seem to think that whites have any legitimate interest at all. That's an astonishing state of affairs.
Hey, Mr. Taylor, thank you for coming to Towson.
My pleasure.
I just have two quick questions. Number one, you have a lot of fans in the room, obviously. I was wondering if
ask a question to the speaker, please.
I was wondering if you could give maybe a link or a quick shout out to where we could purchase more of your materials.
Well, our website is amren, AMREN.com. That stands for American Renaissance. That's our main link to the world.
My second quick question is, there's a talking point that's fairly popular. The talking point is this: race does not exist, right? It's a social construct. If that is true, and I've heard that talking point repeated throughout this audience this evening, if that's true, isn't a black student union illegitimate as well? And how can we define black interest if there is no such thing as blackness to begin with? Isn't everybody here being hypocritical?
Let's go.
Yes, that is an excellent question. And in fact, one point I like to make is this whole idea that race is an optical illusion is so wrong and so stupid that only very intelligent people could possibly persuade themselves that it's true. You very seldom hear black people saying race is a myth, because they know very well race is not a myth. They have a racial identity, they have racial interests. It's only weird white people, by and large, who ever come up with this cuckoo idea. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Celeste Malo. That's my question. Years ago, people came here for freedom. You know, Statue of Liberty clearly stated, you know, that immigrants wanted freedom. That's why they came here to this country. Correct? And you embrace diversity.
You asked that question?
Excuse me, that's not my question.
Oh, okay.
You embrace diversity. You embrace diversity at those points. But now that you guys are seeming to be the minority, I'm sorry, I don't mean to say you guys, the Caucasians, I'm sorry, are seeming to be the minority, there's a problem, and that I don't understand. And I would like to understand, for the problem of diversity, what do you see that you should do to, you know, get rid of this problem? Because how can you get rid of diversity once you brought it to the country?
Well, first of all, I think most people came to this country primarily for economic reasons, wherever they came from. The idea that they came quoting Thomas Jefferson or quoting the U.S. Constitution, no. They come to this country because they think they can make it better. Let's be frank about it. As far as the Statue of Liberty is concerned, the Statue of Liberty was never built as originally to celebrate immigration. It was built to celebrate the 200th anniversary, the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution. It was liberty enlightening the world. It had nothing to do with liberty enlightening the world, not inviting the world. But as far as diversity is concerned, I think that, sure, once people are here, there's a certain amount of diversity, and that's inevitable. But I think that it is spectacularly stupid to build a country on what amounts to a lie. Why should we go about repeating this silly idea that diversity is a strength when in fact it's a weakness? I think it's always a mistake to build a society on something that is simply not true. Furthermore, if we recognize this fundamental truth that diversity is a weakness and not a strength, then I think obviously you would stop immigration. Immigration is contributing.
How do you feel it is best to go about getting rid of diversity?
Well, I don't think you can get rid of it, but you can stop its increasing. Yes, I think I would stopping immigration. That would be the best way to do it.
We have about 10 more minutes left. Please don't go out of line. If you do have a question, let's keep it brief so we get to everybody we can and get a brief answer so we can move forward so we can hear everybody.
Let her hold the
the people of this white student union group are racist. Like, that's just how I feel. Like, you just have a problem with minorities. I feel like when I am actually a black alumni.
Please let me ask you, okay? Please ask the question so we can move forward with this.
Okay. Okay, affirmative action was your primary point of why Towson needs a white student union. My question to you is, because your statistics suggest that if everyone was held to the same standards, that mostly white people would be admitted because the black people would not qualify because of affirmative action.
In most institutions, that's the case.
Okay, but are you considering the history of why some minorities may not have had the same rights as whites historically, which may be the reason why, you know, our test scores may be lower or something like that? You're not considering that. So why shouldn't we have the same opportunities as you, being as though we were not afforded those rights back in the day?
Many people make that argument that because blacks suffer discrimination, that there has to be compensation for the injustices in the past, and that justifies affirmative action racial preferences. Well, the fact is, young people applying to university today, they have lived in the United States that has been practicing affirmative action ever since they were born. It's very difficult to say that young black people today suffered some kind of egregious racial discrimination that must be compensated for. And that is why today, when people talk about justifications for affirmative action racial preferences, they're no longer talking about making up for Jim Crow. Jim Crow ended in the 1950s. What they're talking about is it has become the explanation for affirmative action has now become diversity, because the whole notion that we're making up for slavery, that idea has so become transparently threadbare.
Next question.
My name is Jab Haynes, transfer student representative from Morgan State University. In 1865, slavery was deemed illegal in America. Slavery generated millions of dollars over 2 centuries. Should corporations formed before 1865 be required to acknowledge which financial contributions originated from free slave labor?
Are you talking about the reparations, presumably?
Let me repeat the question. Should corporations formed before 1865 be required to acknowledge which financial contributions originated from free slave labor?
No, I don't think so. What would be the point of, say, well, there were very few corporations that existed before 1865, and what would be the purpose of saying what proportion of your revenues came from slavery related? If you sold clothes to a slave owner and he dressed his slaves with them, is that sort of an illegitimate profit? If you paid a dentist to fix your slave's teeth, is the dentist somehow to be held culpable for that? No, I don't see the benefit of that kind of
Second question, aside from the establishment of American government, what positive aspects of American culture can be solely attributed to Anglo-Saxons?
What positive? Well, I think Mark Twain is an Anglo-Saxon. I think he wrote great books. I think there are many Anglo-Saxon authors. I think Anglo-Saxons built the first universities in this country. Yale was certainly founded. Harvard was founded by Anglo-Saxons. Anglo-Saxons built all the institutions that this started off with. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, all of the constitutional rights, all of these were founded by Anglo-Saxons. Anglo-Saxons built the institutions on which this country is founded, every last one.
Next question. One question, please, in the interest of time.
Okay, I have a response to what you were saying about if whites were to migrate into Mexico, that Mexican government and the Mexican community or culture would be upset that whites were trying to take over and trying to diminish the white culture. You do realize that in the world population, that brown-skinned people outnumber the number of white people around the world. Yeah. Therefore, it is quite possible that within the next 80 years, next 100 years, that you guys will be outnumbered, because there's too many. But you're trying to say you're trying to stop that. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. There are too many brown people around the world compared to the number of white Anglo-Saxons that live in the world. those numbers, go ahead.
Japanese people are a very small minority in the world. They're a very small minority. But they have an immigration policy essentially of zero. They have this quaint notion that they want Japan to stay Japanese. And so they're not going to let people. Are you telling me that wherever non-brown people live, are the Japanese going to be forcibly invaded and kicked off their island by all these brown people you're talking about?
Next question, man.
Okay. I was wondering, why do you use Nigeria to compare?
I could use Ivory Coast. I could
Okay,
use
well,
Ghana,
specifically,
I could use Botswana.
specifically, why did you use Nigeria? I want to know that question.
First came to mind. I could have used Ivory Coast.
Okay, no, but specifically in terms of how... That's what he said, answer my question. So...
Well, okay. It could have been Kenya. It could have been Uganda. It could have been Botswana. Next question.
Next question. More speakers.
Hello, my name's Indigo Potter, and my question really isn't for you because you haven't seemed to be answering the true questions that we want to know. You don't, like, I don't feel any easier about this whole white student union thing. So is there, like, are you the guy who's trying to this? Matt, somebody, is there a perspective of white student union person who can answer my question? You? Okay, like, you keep saying you have all these interests, like, what are your interests, and what are you going to talk about? Like, the first person asked, what are you guys going to talk about? What is the purpose? That question was never answered. What is the purpose? Like, what are you guys going to do?
Sure, go ahead. Well, answer the question.
Well, I think the biggest issue, the fact that you have to ask, what are we going to talk about, that I've never gone to a black student union meeting and asked what y'all are going to talk about. Hold on. Now, the fact that white students want to politically organize and address the issues that Mr. Taylor is talking about, immigration is an issue that is facing every single white country. Demographics, because in no white country are whites even equal to replacement rate in terms of birth rate. Affirmative action and racial preferences. There's a whole host of issues. In Maryland, we have another county that's looking to make English the official language. I think that's something that would interest white students. So there's a whole host of issues. So I'm not really sure what the question is, because we have so many different issues that we've already announced we're going to be talking about, especially Mr. Taylor, the issues that he's discussing. So... Okay.
Well, I'm very sorry for all of you who were unable to ask your questions. I apologize, but apparently the authorities have told us the time's up. And I'd like to thank you, sir, for running this meeting the way you did. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.